Your subconscious mind is the faithful servant that never sleeps, never questions your orders, and never fails to manifest precisely what you've programmed it to create. It controls everything from your heartbeat to your deepest beliefs about what's possible in your life. Yet most people have completely forgotten how to speak its language, how to direct its immense creative power. What if I told you that the most powerful creative force in the entire universe isn't hidden in some ancient temple, secret society, or distant galaxy, but is actually dormant within your own mind at this very moment? A divine seed of unlimited potential just waiting to be awakened. Has this ever happened to you? You've read countless self-help books, attended expensive seminars, followed all the conventional wisdom about changing your life, vision boards, affirmations, positive thinking. Yet somehow you keep finding yourself stuck in the same frustrating patterns. Your relationships follow the same cycles. Your financial situation refuses to improve, and those health goals remain just out of reach despite your sincere efforts. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the problem isn't your dedication or desire. The problem is that you've been searching in all the wrong places, looking outward for solutions, when the master key has been within you all along. Right now, as you're watching this, there's an ancient power operating silently in the background of your awareness, your subconscious mind. This isn't mystical nonsense or New Age fantasy. It's the most practical, scientifically backed truth about human consciousness that has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. Think about it. Every thought you think, every word you speak with conviction, every image you hold in your mind with emotion isn't just evaporating into thin air. These are direct instructions being delivered to the most powerful manifestation mechanism in existence. And here's where it gets fascinating. Stay with me until the end, because what we're about to explore together will fundamentally shift how you understand your relationship with reality itself. Most people are unconsciously programming their subconscious with limiting instructions, planting seeds of doubt, watering them with fear, and then wondering why their harvest looks nothing like their dreams. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The ancient wisdom we're uncovering today isn't about learning something foreign or complicated. It's about awakening to something you've always known but somehow forgot. How to reclaim your position as the conscious director of your own mental movie rather than remaining a confused spectator watching your life unfold beyond your control. What if the God you've been seeking outside yourself has been within you all along, waiting for you to remember the sacred language that activates this dormant power? What if the kingdom of heaven isn't a distant place, but a state of consciousness available to you right now? For generations, humanity has been conditioned to seek answers outside ourselves. We've built magnificent stone temples, established complex religious hierarchies, designed intricate political systems, and paid homage to countless external authorities, all while the most sophisticated temple ever created remains forgotten within our own consciousness. This revelation isn't just transformative, it's revolutionary in its simplicity. Think about your own journey for a moment. How many times have you surrendered your innate power to external sources? How often have you thought, if only I could find the right teacher, the right book, the right system, believing that the answers you seek exist somewhere beyond yourself? This mindset isn't accidental. It's the result of centuries of programming designed to disconnect you from your original source of creative authority. The hidden truth that few ever discover is that this inner temple doesn't require elaborate rituals, special qualifications, or perfect circumstances to access. It requires just one thing: your willingness to remember the creative authority you were born with. This remembering isn't intellectual, it's experiential. It's the profound recognition that the power you've been seeking has always resided within you, waiting patiently behind the veil of forgotten awareness. Now, here's where this journey takes an unexpected turn. What if I told you that you're already using this power every single day, whether you realize it or not? This isn't speculation, it's the fundamental mechanism through which your reality takes shape. Every word you speak with conviction, every image you hold in your mind with emotion, every belief you accept as truth. These aren't just random thoughts floating through your awareness. They're active instructions being delivered directly to the most obedient servant you'll ever encounter, your subconscious mind. This faithful servant never questions your orders, never takes a day off, and never fails to deliver exactly what you've programmed it to create. The impact of this revelation cannot be overstated. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between constructive and destructive commands. It doesn't filter your thoughts based on what would be good for you. It simply executes whatever instructions you feed it, regardless of whether those instructions lead to liberation or limitation. Consider the profound implications of this when you repeatedly say things like, "I always mess this up," or "I'll never have enough money." These aren't innocent observations. They're precise programming directives being faithfully carried out behind the scenes of your awareness. Your subconscious receives these statements as direct commands to create more failure, more scarcity, more of whatever limitation you're unconsciously declaring as your truth. The decisions you make in each moment, what thoughts to entertain, what words to speak, what emotions to nurture, aren't insignificant. They're the fundamental building blocks from which your entire reality is constructed. This isn't mystical thinking. It's the practical application of how consciousness manifests experience. Just as a farmer wouldn't plant weeds and expect to harvest wheat, you cannot plant thoughts of limitation and expect to harvest abundance. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and explore what happens in the garden of your mind when you begin to consciously direct this incredible power. The transformation that occurs when you shift from unconscious programming to conscious creation isn't just remarkable. It's the difference between being swept away by a raging river and learning to navigate it with precision and purpose. Write in the comments, "I'm reclaiming my inner temple," if you're beginning to recognize how you've been unknowingly programming your reality and are ready to take back your creative authority. The most remarkable aspect of this inner creative force is how faithfully it serves your every command. Unlike human relationships that involve negotiation, compromise, and occasional resistance, your subconscious mind operates with unwavering obedience. It never questions your orders, never takes a vacation, never complains about workload, and never fails to manifest exactly what you've programmed it to create. This realization is both liberating and sobering when you truly understand its implications. Imagine having the most dedicated employee in existence, one who works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, executing your instructions with perfect precision. Now imagine that for years, perhaps decades, you've been unconsciously giving this employee terrible directions without even realizing it. This is the predicament most people find themselves in. They unknowingly program their subconscious with limiting instructions through habitual negative self-talk, fearful visualizations, and low expectations, then stand bewildered when their harvest looks nothing like their dreams. The revelation here isn't that you need to gain some new power or develop some special ability. It's that you need to become conscious of the power you've been using all along. The journey toward transformation begins with this profound shift in awareness, this pivotal moment of recognizing that you've been the author of your experience all along, whether creating by conscious choice or unconscious default. Behind the scenes of this unfolding drama of human consciousness lies a profound distinction that changes everything about how we approach personal evolution. There's a fundamental difference between learning something intellectually and awakening to something you already possess. Most educational models treat you like an empty vessel waiting to be filled with information from external sources. You sit in classrooms, read books, watch videos, and absorb facts that exist outside yourself. If these insights have sparked something within you, hit that subscribe button to join our community of conscious creators. We'll continue exploring powerful techniques for awakening the divine potential that already exists within you. But the journey we're exploring operates on an entirely different principle. You're not here as a student cramming for life's exam. You're here as an heir, gradually awakening to an inheritance that was always yours. This distinction revolutionizes the entire path of growth. When you study as an academic, you collect concepts, memorize theories, and store information in your conscious mind. When you awaken as an heir, something far more profound occurs. The knowledge doesn't just sit in your memory banks. It integrates directly into your subconscious, where your actual destiny is being written moment by moment. This revelation carries with it a sense of both tremendous responsibility and incredible freedom. The responsibility comes from recognizing that no one else is writing your story. You are the author, director, and main character of your life's narrative through the thoughts, words, and images you consistently maintain. The freedom emerges when you realize that no external authority holds the key to your transformation. You already possess everything needed for the journey. It simply awaits your conscious activation. The impact of this mindset shift cannot be overstated. It completely redefines your relationship with personal growth. Instead of constantly seeking more information, more techniques, more external validation, you begin the more subtle but infinitely more powerful work of remembering who you truly are. This remembering isn't intellectual, it's experiential. It happens in those quiet moments when you recognize that the divine creative force you've been seeking has been the very awareness looking out through your eyes all along. Now, I want to explore what actually happens in your brain and body when you begin consciously directing this unlimited creative power rather than letting it operate on default programming based on past conditioning and limiting beliefs. The science behind this process reveals something astonishing about the true nature of your relationship with physical reality itself. Write in the comments, "I am the heir, not the student," if you're beginning to recognize the difference between accumulating information and awakening to your inherent creative power. Operating silently in the background of your awareness right now as you're watching this video, your subconscious mind stores a very specific image of who you are. This isn't just a casual self-perception or a fleeting thought about your abilities. This self-image is the master blueprint from which every aspect of your reality is being constructed moment by moment. It's the hidden architecture behind your entire life experience. Your health responds to this internal image with remarkable precision. Your financial situation mirrors this image with unwavering fidelity. Your relationships reflect this image in ways that might seem coincidental, but are actually the result of this unconscious programming. Even your physical environment seems to arrange itself according to this internal picture you carry of yourself. The profound revelation here is that your external world isn't randomly happening to you. It's faithfully reflecting the blueprint you've been holding in the depths of your consciousness. What's absolutely fascinating is that most people have no idea this process is happening. They look at their circumstances and assume they're victims of external forces, bad luck, genetics, economic conditions, other people's decisions, never realizing they're witnessing the faithful manifestation of their own internal self-image. They try to change their outer conditions while leaving the blueprint untouched, which is like trying to build a different house while refusing to modify the architectural plans. The journey toward genuine transformation begins with this pivotal insight. If your current reality is the result of your current self-image, then changing that image becomes the most direct path to changing your life. This isn't about superficial positive thinking or pretending everything is perfect. This is about understanding the actual mechanism through which your inner world creates your outer experience and taking conscious control of that process. Here's where this revelation becomes truly liberating. Your self-image isn't carved in stone. It's not a permanent sentence or a fixed destiny that you're stuck with forever. Your self-image is actually more like software than hardware. It can be updated, rewritten, and completely transformed. Just as a programmer can rewrite code to create new functions and capabilities, you can rewrite the mental programming that defines your self-image and, by extension, your entire life experience. The question isn't whether change is possible, it's whether you're ready to take conscious control of the programming process. Are you willing to examine the current version of your self-image software? Are you prepared to identify the limiting beliefs, the outdated assumptions, and the inherited programming that no longer serves your highest expression? Most importantly, are you ready to begin the deliberate, consistent work of installing new code, new thoughts, images, beliefs, and expectations that align with the reality you truly desire to create? The transformation process isn't about fighting against some mysterious external force. It's about updating outdated mental software that you've been unconsciously running, perhaps for decades. Behind the scenes, this reprogramming process follows predictable patterns that anyone can master with the right understanding and consistent practice. Your neural pathways, your cellular structures, your energetic patterns all respond to this conscious reprogramming with remarkable precision once you understand the language they speak. The impact of this revelation extends far beyond individual success or achievement. When you recognize that your external reality is the faithful reflection of your internal programming, you reclaim a level of creative authority that few ever experience. You move from being a passive recipient of circumstances to becoming an active participant in the creation of your life experience. This shift in perspective doesn't just change what you do. It transforms who you are at the most fundamental level. Now, I want to explore the specific mechanism through which your subconscious mind turns these internal images into physical reality, because there's a precise formula operating behind the scenes that most people never discover. This formula reveals why some people seem to effortlessly create the lives they desire, while others remain stuck in patterns of limitation despite their best efforts. Write in the comments, "I'm updating my internal software," if you're beginning to see how your self-image has been silently shaping your reality and you're ready to take conscious control of this programming process. When you truly grasp that your subconscious mind constantly works to bring your self-image into physical manifestation, something remarkable happens in your perception. Every challenge, every limitation, every recurring pattern in your life transforms from being a source of frustration into valuable feedback about what's actually programmed in your inner operating system. This revelation completely shifts your relationship with obstacles. Instead of asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" you begin asking, "What part of my mental programming is creating this experience?" If you've found value in today's message, that like button is right there, and each click helps spread this understanding to others who are searching for these same truths. This shift in perspective is where genuine transformation begins. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change their external results while leaving their internal blueprint completely untouched. It's like trying to change what appears on your computer screen by wiping the display with a cloth while ignoring the software that's generating the image. No matter how vigorously you clean the screen, the same patterns will continue appearing until you update the underlying program. The journey of conscious creation requires developing what psychologists call metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking patterns with detachment and clarity. This heightened awareness allows you to identify which aspects of your mental programming are serving your evolution and which are creating the limitations you're trying to overcome. The hidden truth is that every external circumstance provides a perfect mirror reflecting your internal beliefs back to you with remarkable precision. Financial struggles reflect your deepest beliefs about money and worthiness. Health challenges reflect your subconscious programming about your body's capabilities. Relationship patterns mirror your most fundamental beliefs about love and connection. This mirroring process isn't punishment. It's feedback designed to help you identify what needs reprogramming in your mental software. Once you recognize this, every challenge becomes an opportunity for conscious evolution rather than evidence of victimhood. And yet, here's the paradox that keeps so many people trapped. Even when individuals intellectually understand these principles, even when they're exposed to powerful concepts about mental creation and conscious manifestation, they continue operating from what I call the victim cycle. This pattern runs so deep in human psychology that it persists even in people who consider themselves spiritually evolved or mentally empowered. The victim cycle manifests in subtle but persistent ways. People will enthusiastically share inspirational quotes about mindset on social media. They'll attend transformational seminars and workshops. They'll read books about conscious creation and discuss these concepts with genuine excitement. But then, and this is the crucial point, they return to their daily lives and continue speaking the same limiting language, entertaining the same defeating thoughts, and making decisions from the same disempowered mindset they've always operated from. This disconnect between intellectual understanding and lived experience creates a particularly painful form of cognitive dissonance. The person knows enough to recognize they're creating their reality, but hasn't developed the mental discipline to actually change the creation process. They become stuck in a loop of knowing better but doing the same, which adds a layer of self-judgment to their existing challenges. Behind the scenes of this frustrating cycle lies a fundamental misunderstanding about how transformation actually occurs. Most people approach personal growth as an emotional project rather than a mental discipline. They think they need to feel differently before they can think differently, or they need to get motivated before they can change their internal dialogue. This approach keeps them trapped because emotions are effects, not causes. They're the result of your mental programming, not the source of it. The breakthrough comes when you realize that breaking free from victimhood isn't about emotional catharsis or waiting for inspiration to strike. It's about something far simpler and far more powerful: directed mental discipline. This means consciously choosing your thoughts with the same intentionality that a master chef selects ingredients, understanding that whatever you focus on with feeling becomes the recipe your subconscious uses to create your experience. What makes this approach so revolutionary is that you're working directly with the most fundamental level of creation, the thoughts, images, and beliefs that form the foundation of your reality. You're not trying to change effects while leaving causes untouched. You're addressing the root programming that generates your entire life experience. Now, I want to explore what actually happens in your body and brain when you begin this process of conscious reprogramming, because there's a fascinating biological dimension to this work that explains why mere intellectual understanding rarely creates lasting change, while embodied practice transforms your entire reality. Write in the comments, "I'm breaking the victim cycle," if you're ready to move beyond intellectual understanding to the actual practice of conscious creation. Most people fundamentally misunderstand the relationship between thoughts and emotions in the transformation process. They approach personal growth as primarily an emotional project, waiting to feel inspired, motivated, or confident before they can begin thinking differently about themselves and their possibilities. This backwards approach keeps them perpetually trapped because it misunderstands the actual sequence of creation. Your emotions don't create your thoughts. Your thoughts create your emotions. Your feelings aren't the cause of your mental state, they're the result of it. This revelation completely transforms how you approach personal evolution. Instead of waiting to feel different before you can think different, you recognize that deliberately choosing different thoughts is what generates different emotional states. The journey of transformation begins with mental discipline, not emotional catharsis. This insight liberates you from the endless cycle of waiting for the right feelings before taking action. When you understand that emotions are effects rather than causes, you can begin the work of conscious creation regardless of how you currently feel. In fact, the moments when you feel least inspired are precisely when this mental discipline becomes most powerful, because you're no longer leaving your creative process at the mercy of fluctuating emotional states. Think about what this means for your daily practice. You don't need to experience an emotional breakthrough before you can begin reprogramming your subconscious. You don't need to feel confident before you can entertain thoughts of success. You don't need to feel worthy before you can accept thoughts of abundance. The deliberate choice of empowering thoughts regardless of current emotional states is what eventually transforms both your inner experience and your outer circumstances. What makes this approach so effective is that you're working directly with the most reliable partner you'll ever have in this journey of transformation, your subconscious mind. This remarkable aspect of your consciousness possesses qualities that most people never fully appreciate. It's simple in its operation, but not weak in its impact. It's obedient to your instructions, but not passive in its execution. Think of your subconscious as the most dedicated employee you could ever imagine, one who never calls in sick, never takes a vacation, never questions your orders, and never stops working on the projects you've assigned. This realization should completely shift how you approach change in your life. Right now, while you're listening to these words, your subconscious is actively working on whatever ideas you've planted in it recently. If you've been feeding it thoughts of limitation, it's busy finding ways to manifest those limitations in your experience. If you've been rehearsing scenarios of failure or disappointment, it's faithfully working to bring those scenarios into your reality. But here's the beautiful part. The moment you plant different ideas, it switches its entire operation to serve those new instructions with the same unwavering dedication. The revelation that transforms everything is this. Your subconscious doesn't have preferences about what it creates. It doesn't judge your goals as too big or too small. It doesn't analyze whether you deserve what you're asking for or whether it's realistic given your current circumstances. It simply takes whatever you consistently feed it and begins the process of making it real. Its sole purpose is faithful execution of the mental blueprints you provide, regardless of whether those blueprints lead to expansion or contraction of your life experience. This understanding reveals why the victim cycle is so unnecessary and so tragic. People remain stuck not because change is impossible or because external circumstances are conspiring against them, but because they keep giving their subconscious the same instructions while expecting different results. They continue programming it with phrases like "nothing ever works out for me," or "I always struggle with money," or "relationships are hard for me," and then wonder why these patterns persist despite their conscious desire for something better. The journey toward genuine transformation begins when you recognize that every single thought you think, every word you speak, and every image you hold in your mind is either programming your subconscious for success or programming it for struggle. There's no neutral ground in this process. You're always programming something. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Now, I want to explore the specific language that your subconscious mind responds to most powerfully, because there's a particular way of communicating with this inner intelligence that accelerates the manifestation process beyond what most people ever experience. Understanding this language reveals why certain affirmations seem to work miraculously, while others produce no results at all. Despite appearing similar on the surface, write in the comments, "I choose mental discipline," if you're beginning to recognize the true relationship between thoughts and emotions in the creation process. There is a fundamental truth that most people never fully grasp about the creative process happening in their minds right now. There is absolutely no neutral ground in this work. Every single thought you entertain, every word you speak with conviction, and every mental image you hold with emotion is either programming your subconscious for expansion or for limitation, for success or for struggle. There's no middle path, no pause button, no neutral state where your mental programming takes a break. This revelation changes everything about how you approach your moment-to-moment mental activity. Most people wander through their days in a state of mental carelessness, allowing random thoughts, habitual complaints, and unconscious worries to dominate their inner landscape. They don't recognize that this seemingly innocent mental chatter is actually delivering precise programming instructions to their subconscious mind with every passing moment. Think about your own mental patterns right now. In the past 24 hours alone, what kind of seeds have you been planting in the fertile soil of your subconscious? Have you been unconsciously reinforcing thoughts of scarcity, limitation, fear, or unworthiness? Or have you been deliberately cultivating thoughts of abundance, possibility, confidence, and value? Your answer to this question reveals more about your future circumstances than any external factor in your life. The profound insight that transforms your journey is recognizing that you're always programming something. Whether through conscious choice or unconscious default, your subconscious mind is receiving instructions from your thought patterns right now, in this very moment. The only question is whether you're directing this programming process intentionally or allowing it to operate on autopilot based on past conditioning and limiting beliefs. This understanding reveals why mindfulness, the practice of becoming aware of your thoughts without immediate identification with them, becomes such a crucial stepping stone in the transformation process. Before you can change your mental programming, you must first become aware of what you're currently programming. This awakened awareness creates the space for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. Now here's where this journey takes a practical turn. Your subconscious mind doesn't learn through intellectual understanding or occasional exposure to new ideas. It learns through the same mechanism that allowed you to master walking as a child: repetition and persistence. Think about how you developed that physical skill. You didn't read a book about walking or attend a seminar on bipedal movement. You learned through consistent practice, through falling and getting back up, through repeated attempts until the neural pathways were so established that walking became as natural as breathing. Your subconscious mind operates according to this exact same principle. Just as your body required consistent practice to develop physical coordination, your inner mind requires consistent mental practice to develop new patterns of thought and manifestation. This is the hidden mechanism behind all effective affirmation work, visualization practices, and intentional reprogramming techniques. The revelation that revolutionizes this process is understanding that mere mechanical repetition isn't enough. Repeating empty phrases without genuine feeling or conviction is like trying to plant seeds without proper soil preparation. They simply don't take root. The effectiveness of your mental programming depends on both consistency and emotional authenticity. Your subconscious responds not just to the words themselves, but to the emotional charge that accompanies them. Consider the profound difference between mechanically repeating, "I am abundant," while your inner feeling states contradict this affirmation, versus declaring the same phrase with genuine conviction and emotional resonance. The first approach creates internal conflict. The second creates internal alignment. Your subconscious doesn't respond to empty words. It responds to emotionally charged instructions that you accept as your truth. The journey of transformation isn't about performing occasional mental rituals or reciting hollow affirmations. It's about developing what we might call mental hygiene, a consistent practice of monitoring and directing your thought patterns with the same diligence you apply to physical hygiene. Just as you wouldn't go days without bathing your body, you cannot allow your mind to marinate in toxic thought patterns without experiencing the consequences in your physical reality. Now, I want to explore what actually happens behind the scenes when this consistent mental practice begins creating tangible changes in your external circumstances, because there's a specific pathway through which thoughts become things that reveals the true power of your God-seed consciousness. Write in the comments, "I'm becoming a conscious programmer," if you're beginning to recognize the responsibility and power of directing your mental activities with awareness and intention. What we're really exploring together isn't religion or spirituality in the traditional sense. You're not being asked to adopt new beliefs, follow specific doctrines, or worship particular deities. Instead, you're stepping into what can only be described as an invisible temple, a sacred space that exists within the landscape of your own consciousness. This inner sanctuary has always been there, waiting patiently for you to recognize its existence and begin working with its transformative power. In this invisible temple, your mind serves as the altar upon which the creative process unfolds. Your words become the offerings that activate this process. Every phrase you speak with conviction, every declaration you make with genuine feeling, functions as a sacred invocation that sets universal forces into motion. Your thoughts are prayers, not in the sense of desperate pleading to an external power, but as direct communications to the creative intelligence that permeates your entire being. The profound revelation that changes everything about this journey is that this temple doesn't require faith. In the traditional sense, it demands something far more practical and immediate: application. The universal laws that govern how your subconscious mind operates don't care whether you believe in them or not. They function with the same unwavering consistency as gravity or electricity, regardless of your personal opinions about their validity. This understanding liberates you from the burden of having to believe before you can experience results. You don't need to convince yourself that these principles work. You don't need to achieve perfect faith before you can begin the transformation process. You simply need to apply the principles with the same methodical persistence you would use to master any skill, and the evidence will speak for itself through the changes that begin manifesting in your life. Think about how gravity operates. It doesn't require your belief or endorsement to function. You can doubt gravity all day long, but if you step off a cliff, you'll still fall according to its immutable law. The same principle applies to the laws governing your subconscious mind. Whether you acknowledge these laws or not, whether you work with them consciously or remain unaware of their operation, they continue functioning with perfect precision in your life experience. The beauty of working with universal laws is their complete impartiality. They don't play favorites. They don't require you to be spiritually advanced or emotionally perfect. They don't demand special qualifications or exclusive access. They simply respond to consistent application with predictable results every single time for every single person who works with them correctly. When you understand this, the entire journey becomes less mystical and more scientific. You're not hoping for divine intervention or supernatural assistance. You're engaging with reliable principles that respond to your conscious participation. This shift in perspective transforms how you approach your practice. Instead of wondering whether you're worthy enough or believing strongly enough, you simply focus on applying the principles with consistency and precision. This is why so many people who discover these principles experience rapid transformations that seem almost miraculous to outside observers. They're not the recipients of special favor or unusual luck. They've simply learned to work with laws that were always operating in their lives. But now they're doing it consciously and intentionally, instead of accidentally and unconsciously. The revelation here is that you've always been using these principles. Every condition in your current life, whether desirable or undesirable, has been created through your unconscious application of these exact same laws. You've been praying without realizing it, making offerings without recognizing the temple, and creating without understanding the process. The only difference now is that you're beginning to do consciously what you've always been doing. Unconsciously, this understanding transforms the entire spiritual journey from a quest for external salvation to an awakening to internal power. You're not seeking connection to some distant creative force. You're recognizing your inseparable oneness with that force. You're not trying to earn divine favor. You're learning to consciously direct the divine creativity that has always expressed itself through your being. Now, I want to explore what happens in your physical body when you begin consciously applying these universal laws, because there's a remarkable biological dimension to this work that explains why consistent mental practice literally rewires your brain and reprograms your cellular structure in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand. Write in the comments, universal laws respond to application, not belief, if you're beginning to recognize the consistent, reliable nature of the creative principles operating in your consciousness. When you truly grasp that every phrase you repeat, every emotion you maintain, and every image you visualize functions as a living seed planted directly into your subconscious mind, something remarkable happens in your relationship with language. You can no longer speak casually or think carelessly. This isn't about becoming obsessive or paranoid about your thoughts. It's about awakening to the reality that your words carry creative power far beyond what most people ever imagine. Think about this for a moment. Every single phrase that comes out of your mouth or moves through your mind isn't just sound waves or fleeting mental activity. Each word is a living instruction being delivered to the most receptive and obedient creative force in your personal universe. The awakening journey begins when you recognize the sacred nature of speech itself, not just in formal prayers or affirmations, but in your everyday communications with yourself and others. The revelation that transforms everything is understanding that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between literal statements and figurative expressions. It doesn't recognize sarcasm, humor, or exaggeration. It simply receives whatever you declare with emotional intensity as a direct blueprint for creation. When you say, "This is killing me," about a minor inconvenience, your subconscious doesn't understand you're speaking metaphorically. It receives an instruction about death and begins orchestrating biological responses aligned with that instruction. This insight completely shifts your relationship with casual speech. Phrases like "I can't afford it," or "I'm not good at math," or "my memory is terrible," are no longer innocent observations about current circumstances. They're powerful programming statements that your subconscious faithfully implements as continuing conditions in your experience. Your words aren't just describing your reality, they're creating it with precision that would astonish you if you could observe the process directly. The journey toward conscious creation requires developing what we might call linguistic sovereignty, the ability to choose your words based on what you want to create rather than what you're currently experiencing. This doesn't mean denying present challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It means learning to speak about current circumstances in ways that direct your creative power toward transformation rather than reinforcement. Most people go through their entire lives unconsciously programming their subconscious with contradictory and often destructive instructions without ever realizing what they're doing. They'll say things like, "I'm so stupid," when they make a mistake, or "I never have enough money" when paying bills, or "I'm getting old" when looking in the mirror. They think these are just innocent expressions of temporary frustration or casual observations about life circumstances. But their subconscious mind receives each phrase as a serious directive to be implemented in their reality. The hidden tragedy in this unconscious programming is that people are actively creating the very limitations they're complaining about. The person who repeatedly says, "I'm always late," is literally programming tardiness into their experience pattern. The individual who constantly remarks, "I never catch a break," is instructing their subconscious to block fortuitous opportunities. The entrepreneur who habitually thinks business is so hard right now is coding difficulty into their commercial endeavors. What makes this pattern so insidious is that when these programmed conditions manifest, they seem to confirm the original statement, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that appears to be external reality when it's actually self-generated experience. The person sees their continued lateness as evidence that they're always late, rather than recognizing it as the natural result of their own verbal programming. The journey of awakening requires developing a new relationship with language, one where you speak as a conscious creator rather than a passive observer of circumstances. This doesn't mean adopting artificial positive phrases that feel fake or forced. It means learning to tell the truth about what you want to create with the same conviction you've previously used when talking about what you don't want to experience. The blueprint for transformation begins with recognizing the creative power of your everyday speech. Your casual comments, your inner dialogue, your reflexive responses to situations, all of these are delivering precise instructions to your subconscious mind. When you become aware of this process, you naturally become more intentional with your language, understanding that your words are literally programming your future experience. Now, I want to explore what happens in your mental garden when you begin consciously cultivating new thought patterns, because there's a specific cultivation process that determines whether your conscious programming efforts override years of habitual thinking or simply add to the confusion already present in your subconscious mind. Write in the comments, "I'm watching my words," if you're beginning to recognize the creative power of your everyday speech and are ready to become more intentional with your language. Your subconscious mind functions as the most fertile soil imaginable, far more responsive than any physical garden you could ever cultivate. Every mental image you repeatedly hold, every belief you consistently entertain, every sustained emotion you allow to flow through your awareness becomes a seed planted in this inner soil. And just like any garden, what grows there depends entirely on what you plant and how you tend to it. The journey we're taking together is really about becoming a conscious gardener rather than an unconscious one. Most people are shocked when they begin examining the mental seeds they've been planting without awareness. They discover they've been cultivating worry instead of confidence, scarcity instead of abundance, criticism instead of appreciation, No wonder their external harvest looks nothing like their conscious desires. Think about your own mental garden right now. What seeds have you been planting most consistently? Have you been nurturing thoughts of health, vitality, abundance, and possibility? Or have you been unconsciously cultivating limitation, fear, doubt, and resignation? The harvest appearing in your external life reveals exactly what you've been planting in your internal garden. Not what you've planted occasionally during moments of inspiration, but what you've cultivated consistently through habitual thought patterns. The beautiful revelation that transforms this entire journey is that your subconscious soil is incredibly responsive and doesn't hold grudges about past plantings. It's always ready to grow whatever new seeds you consciously introduce, regardless of what was there before. This means that transformation doesn't require fighting against old patterns or struggling to eliminate unwanted conditions. It simply requires consistent planting of new seeds through deliberate thought selection. Behind the scenes of this mental gardening process lies a quality of your subconscious mind that most people find both liberating and sobering when they truly grasp it. Your inner mind operates with complete impartiality. It doesn't evaluate the moral worth of your thoughts. It doesn't judge whether your mental images will benefit you or harm you. And it certainly doesn't filter out ideas that might create problems in your life. Just like fertile earth that will grow whatever seeds are planted in it, whether they're wheat or weeds, nourishment or poison, your subconscious simply accepts whatever material you consistently feed it through persistent thoughts accompanied by strong emotion. It doesn't care if you're programming it for success or failure, health or sickness, abundance or poverty. It simply responds to the emotional intensity and repetitive nature of whatever thoughts you're planting. This impartial nature of your subconscious is both its greatest gift and its most dangerous quality. It means you have access to unlimited creative power, but it also means that this power will faithfully serve whatever instructions you give it, regardless of whether those instructions align with your conscious desires. The quality of what grows in your life experience depends entirely on the quality of seeds you plant, not on the inherent goodness or worthiness of the soil itself. This revelation explains why so many people find themselves trapped in patterns they consciously want to change, but somehow can't seem to escape. They're not victims of external circumstances or genetic predispositions. They're unconscious farmers who have been unknowingly cultivating the very conditions they're trying to avoid. The tragedy is that they've been working just as hard to create their problems as successful people work to create their breakthroughs, but they've been doing it accidentally, without awareness of the cause and effect relationship between their mental habits and their life results. The journey toward conscious creation requires developing what we might call gardening wisdom, the ability to discern which thought seeds deserve space in your mental garden and which should be left unplanted regardless of how persistently they appear in your awareness. This wisdom isn't about pretending negative thoughts don't exist or forcing yourself to think positively all the time. It's about making conscious choices about which thoughts you'll nurture with your continued attention and emotional energy. What makes this mental gardening process so powerful is that it operates according to spiritual principles that have been recognized by wisdom traditions throughout human history. When Jesus spoke about faith as small as a mustard seed being able to move mountains, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was describing the literal process through which consciousness creates reality. The mustard seed represents the initial thought planted in fertile subconscious soil. When properly nurtured, this tiny seed eventually produces manifestations that seem miraculous to those who don't understand the process. Now, I want to explore how specific phrases you use every day become precise planting instructions for your subconscious garden, because there are certain common expressions that function as particularly destructive seeds when planted with emotional intensity. Write in the comments, "I am becoming a conscious gardener," if you're beginning to recognize the relationship between your habitual thoughts and the conditions growing in your life experience. Think about the phrases you hear people say regularly, statements that have become so automatic they don't even notice they're saying them. "This always happens to me" is one of the most common and devastating pieces of unconscious programming circulating in human consciousness. Every time someone repeats this phrase with the emotional charge of frustration or resignation, they're literally instructing their subconscious to ensure that this pattern continues happening to them without interruption. The person using this phrase thinks they're simply commenting on their bad luck or making an observation about recurring circumstances. But behind the scenes, their subconscious receives this as a direct order to maintain the pattern, to block alternative possibilities, and to organize their perception in ways that confirm this statement. They become unconscious architects of their own limitation, building their prison one repetitive thought at a time. "I never have luck" is another powerful piece of destructive programming that millions of people repeat daily. The individual saying this believes they're simply stating a fact about their circumstances, but their subconscious receives it as a precise directive to block fortunate coincidences, prevent timely opportunities, and maintain conditions of struggle. With each emotionally charged repetition, they're literally coding their reality to exclude lucky breaks and fortunate timing. What makes this pattern so tragic is that these individuals often work incredibly hard to improve their lives through external actions. They'll change jobs, move to different cities, try new strategies, read self-help books, and attend transformational seminars, all while continuing to program their subconscious with the same limiting beliefs that created their original problems. It's like planting crabgrass seeds while hoping for roses to grow. No amount of watering, fertilizing, or tending will change the harvest when the wrong seeds have been planted. The hidden truth behind most persistent life challenges is this pattern of unconscious mental farming. People are suffering not because life is inherently difficult or because they're unlucky or cursed, but because they've been unknowingly programming their subconscious mind to recreate the same limiting conditions over and over again. Their conscious mind wants one thing, but their unconscious programming is working tirelessly to create something completely different. The journey from unconscious victim to conscious creator involves becoming aware of these habitual phrases and deliberately choosing different mental seeds to plant. But here's what determines whether your new mental seeds actually take root. It's not just the words you choose or the images you visualize, but the consistency and emotional authenticity with which you plant them. This is where mere positive thinking transforms into genuine mental nutrition and lasting change. Your mind operates primarily as what can only be described as a digestive apparatus. Just as your stomach breaks down physical food, extracting nutrients and converting them into blood, tissue, and energy, your subconscious mind breaks down mental food. Thoughts, images, words, and emotional experiences, converting them into your actual living conditions, emotional states, and tangible realities. This isn't metaphorical comparison. It's describing the actual mechanism through which consciousness becomes experience. Every thought you entertain, every image you visualize, every word you speak, and every emotion you sustain gets processed by your subconscious mind as raw material for constructing your life. Experience. Just as your physical health depends on the quality of food you consume, your life circumstances depend entirely on the quality of mental nutrition you're feeding your subconscious mind. This revelation explains why some people seem to effortlessly maintain positive life conditions, while others struggle constantly despite their best conscious efforts. The successful ones have developed what can only be called excellent mental nutrition habits. They're careful about what thoughts they entertain, selective about what images they allow into their consciousness, and disciplined about the emotional states they choose to sustain. Most people, however, have terrible mental nutrition habits. They consume mental junk food all day long. Worry, complaint, negative news, pessimistic conversations, fearful projections, and limiting beliefs. Then wonder why their life circumstances reflect these poor dietary choices. They're trying to create healthy outcomes while feeding their subconscious mind a steady diet of mental toxins. The transformation journey isn't just about changing your actions or improving your circumstances. It's about taking complete responsibility for the quality of mental nutrition you're providing to your subconscious mind every single day. When you understand that your thoughts are literally the food from which your reality is constructed, you naturally become more selective about what you allow into your mental ecosystem. Now, I want to explore how this mental nutrition principle applies to physical healing, because there's a remarkable connection between your verbal programming and your body's ability to repair itself that most people never discover. A connection that explains why certain individuals experience seemingly miraculous recoveries, while others remain trapped in chronic conditions despite similar treatments. Write in the comments, "I'm upgrading my mental nutrition," if you're beginning to recognize how the quality of your thoughts directly impacts the quality of your life experience. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this transformation in action. There was a woman who had been struggling with chronic fatigue for years. She had consulted multiple doctors, tried various treatments, explored different therapeutic approaches, and made countless lifestyle changes. Yet nothing seemed to provide lasting relief. Her energy levels remained consistently low, affecting every aspect of her life, from her career to her relationships to her daily functionality. What changed everything wasn't a new medication, diet plan, or medical procedure. It was her decision to consciously reprogram her subconscious mind with new instructions about her energy and vitality. Every night for 30 days, just before drifting off to sleep, when the subconscious is most receptive, she repeated a specific phrase with genuine intention and emotional conviction. "I am pure energy. My body responds to life." This wasn't mechanical, repetition, or wishful thinking. She was deliberately changing the quality of thoughts, entering what I call her inner field. She understood that her chronic fatigue was, in part, the manifestation of years of unconscious programming about her body's limitations and energy capacity. Phrases like, "I'm always tired," "I have no energy," and "I can never keep up," that she had repeated thousands of times with emotional intensity. The transformation was remarkable. Within those 30 days, her chronic fatigue began to disappear without any additional medical intervention. Her energy levels returned, her vitality increased, and her entire outlook on life shifted dramatically. What had happened wasn't a miracle in the supernatural sense. It was the natural result of consciously directing her subconscious mind to create a different physical reality based on new mental programming. This same principle operates across every area of human experience, including financial circumstances. Consider the journey of a man who had been living in genuine scarcity for years. Despite working hard and trying various strategies to improve his financial situation, he found himself trapped in a cycle of barely meeting his basic needs, constantly worrying about money and feeling that abundance was something that happened to other people but not to him. Like many people in similar situations, he had been unconsciously programming his subconscious with thoughts of limitation and lack. His mental nutrition consisted primarily of worry about bills, fear of unexpected expenses, and constant rumination on phrases like, "I never have enough," and "money is always tight for me." His breakthrough came when he decided to plant different seeds in his mental garden. He began repeating with sincere conviction, "I am a channel of infinite provision. Everything comes to me easily." But here's what made his approach so effective. He coupled this affirmation with daily gratitude for what he already had. No matter how modest it seemed, he found reasons to genuinely appreciate his current resources. He wasn't trying to convince himself of something he didn't believe. He was systematically reprogramming his subconscious to recognize and attract abundance rather than scarcity. The results appeared faster than he had expected. Within 6 weeks of consistent mental programming, an unexpected opportunity presented itself that completely resolved his immediate financial needs and opened pathways to prosperity he couldn't have imagined before. This wasn't coincidence or luck. It was the predictable result of aligning his subconscious programming with abundance rather than scarcity. The journey of transformation requires understanding that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you're visualizing and what you're actually experiencing. When you consistently feed it images of health, vitality, abundance, and success accompanied by genuine emotion, it begins organizing your thoughts, decisions, and actions to create conditions that match those mental images. This revelation explains why these principles work regardless of your starting point or current circumstances. Your subconscious isn't limited by your past experiences, your current bank account, or your medical history. It responds to what you're programming it with right now, in this moment, through your conscious choices about what thoughts to entertain and what mental images to cultivate. Now, I want to explore the critical timing factor that determines whether your conscious programming efforts will successfully override years of unconscious conditioning, because there's a specific window during each 24-hour cycle when your subconscious mind is most receptive to new instructions. Write in the comments, "I'm ready for reprogramming," if these real-world examples of transformation are helping you understand the practical application of these principles in your own life. Most people fundamentally misunderstand how their subconscious mind operates. They think of it as a passive storage unit, like a filing cabinet where thoughts occasionally get deposited and retrieved when needed. This couldn't be further from the truth about this remarkable aspect of your consciousness. Your subconscious functions as dynamic living soil, always active, constantly working, perpetually collecting every word you pronounce with conviction and every image you maintain with genuine emotion. This revelation changes everything about how you approach mental programming. Your subconscious isn't waiting for you to sit down for formal meditation sessions or structured affirmation practices. It's operating right now in this very moment, processing every internal conversation you're having with yourself, the casual thoughts you entertain while driving to work, the mental commentary you engage in while watching the news, the silent conversations you have with yourself while lying in bed. This ongoing internal dialogue represents your real agricultural labor. Think about this for a moment. Most people are incredibly careless with their internal conversation, treating it as meaningless background noise rather than recognizing it as the primary mechanism through which they're programming their future experiences. They'll spend hours researching the best foods for their physical health while completely ignoring the mental nutrition they're feeding their subconscious mind every single day. The individuals who experience rapid transformation understand that conscious creation isn't a part-time project. They recognize that every moment of internal dialogue is either planting constructive seeds or destructive ones. They become vigilant gardeners of their own minds, paying attention to the quality of thoughts they're cultivating, not just during dedicated practice time, but throughout their entire waking experience. This brings us to one of the most profound spiritual insights ever recorded, one that perfectly describes the mechanism we've been exploring. When Jesus spoke about the kingdom of heaven being like a man who sowed good seed in his field, He wasn't offering a religious metaphor or an abstract theological concept. He was providing a precise description of how your inner mind actually operates. The field he referenced is your subconscious mind, and the good seed represents the constructive thoughts, positive images, and life-affirming beliefs that you can consciously choose to plant there. This parable reveals the hidden truth behind all genuine spiritual teaching and personal transformation. The kingdom of heaven isn't a distant destination you reach after death or through perfect moral behavior. It's a state of consciousness you can access right now by learning to sow the right seeds in the fertile field of your subconscious mind. When you plant thoughts of health, abundance, love, and peace with consistency and emotional conviction, your external reality begins reflecting these internal conditions. But here's where this gets really profound. The parable also mentions that while the man slept, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat. This perfectly describes what happens when you're not consciously tending your mental garden. Your subconscious mind never stops working, never takes a break from its agricultural labor. If you're not deliberately planting constructive thoughts, negative programming from your environment, your past experiences and your unconscious fears will plant themselves. This is why some people seem to effortlessly maintain positive life conditions, while others constantly struggle against recurring problems. The successful ones have learned to be vigilant gardeners of their consciousness. They understand that mental farming isn't a hobby or occasional practice. It's a full-time responsibility that determines the quality of their entire life experience. The journey we're taking together is really about awakening to this responsibility and embracing it as the most important work you'll ever do. Every decision you make about what to think, what to say, and what to visualize is literally determining the landscape of your future reality. Your internal conversation isn't separate from your external circumstances. It's the invisible blueprint from which your visible life is being constructed. Now, I want to explore what happens when this dynamic soil of your subconscious encounters resistance, because there's a specific pattern that sabotages most people's transformation efforts before they even realize what's happening. This pattern reveals itself in one of the most misunderstood aspects of how your subconscious mind actually operates: its relationship with time. Write in the comments, "I'm tending my inner field," if you're beginning to understand that your subconscious is always working with whatever seeds you're planting, whether consciously or unconsciously. Unlike your conscious mind, which gets tired, requires breaks, and needs regular periods of rest to function properly, your subconscious mind operates under what can only be described as the never-sleeping law. Right now, while you're watching this video, your subconscious is working. When you're walking down the street, it's working. When you're talking to friends, it's working. When you're experiencing difficult emotions, it's working. And most importantly, when you're sleeping at night, it's still working. This continuous operation means that your subconscious never suspends its activity due to fatigue, never takes a vacation from its responsibilities, and never waits for you to gain clarity about what you want before it begins executing its programming. It doesn't operate through consultation or committee meetings with your conscious mind. It functions through something far more direct and immediate: pure programming based on whatever instructions you've been feeding it most consistently. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach personal transformation. Most people think they can work on their mindset for 20 minutes in the morning and then spend the rest of the day thinking whatever random thoughts cross their mind without consequence. But your subconscious doesn't operate on a part-time schedule. Every hour you're awake, it's collecting data about what you really believe, what you truly expect, and what you're genuinely programming it to create in your life. This is where The absence of filtering becomes both the greatest opportunity and the greatest danger in working with your subconscious mind. When you deliver a clear, repeated image charged with genuine emotion to your subconscious, it receives that image as a direct order to be executed. It doesn't pause to evaluate whether this image represents something you consciously desire or something you're trying to avoid. It doesn't analyze whether the instruction will benefit you or harm you. It simply accepts the emotional data and begins the process of execution without any filtering mechanism whatsoever. This reveals why so many people struggle with transformation despite their sincere conscious intentions. They'll spend time visualizing success, health, or abundance, but then they'll spend hours throughout the day worrying about failure, imagining worst-case scenarios, or rehearsing fears about what might go wrong. Their subconscious receives both sets of instructions with equal validity, but it tends to execute the ones that carry the strongest emotional charge and the most frequent repetition. The hidden truth behind most transformation struggles is this conflict between conscious desires and unconscious programming. People want health, but spend more mental energy focused on their symptoms. They desire financial abundance, but invest more emotional attention in their bills and limitations. They long for loving relationships, but replay past hurts and future fears more vividly than they visualize harmonious connections. Your subconscious mind doesn't have the ability to resolve these contradictions for you. It simply works with whatever programming carries the most emotional intensity and repetitive focus. This is why willpower alone rarely creates lasting change. You're trying to override a system that operates on completely different principles than conscious decision-making. Now, here's where this revelation becomes particularly powerful. The transition into sleep offers one of the most potent opportunities for transformation available to you. This is where the real magic of reprogramming happens, not because sleep itself is mystical, but because of how your subconscious mind operates during those crucial hours when your conscious mind finally steps aside. While your body enters its rest phase and your conscious mind releases its grip on analytical thinking, your subconscious mind actually increases its activity. But here's the key insight that changes everything. Your subconscious works throughout the night with whatever images, phrases, and emotions were the last things registered in your consciousness before sleep. If those final mental impressions are of peace, health, abundance, and harmony, your subconscious spends the entire night activating what can only be described as internal healing and creative machinery. Think about the profound implications of this. For approximately 8 hours every night, your subconscious has uninterrupted access to work on whatever programming you've given it without interference from doubt, logic, or contradictory thoughts. If you've planted seeds of health and vitality before sleep, your subconscious spends those hours orchestrating cellular repair, optimizing immune function, and aligning your body's systems for greater harmony. If you've programmed abundance and opportunity, it works through the night organizing thoughts, insights, and intuitive guidance that will lead you toward those conditions. But if your last conscious thoughts before sleep are filled with worry, fear, resentment, or limitation, your subconscious dedicates those same precious hours to reinforcing those patterns, strengthening the neural pathways associated with stress, and preparing your body and mind to continue experiencing whatever you've emotionally programmed as your reality. Now, I want to explore what happens when you combine this understanding of sleep programming with a specific technique for emotional activation. Because there's a particular state that supercharges your subconscious programming beyond what most people ever experience in their transformation journey. Write in the comments, "I'm guarding my pre-sleep thoughts," if you're beginning to recognize the crucial importance of those final minutes before you drift into sleep each night. There's a crucial element to subconscious programming that most people completely misunderstand, and it explains why intellectual knowledge rarely creates lasting transformation. Your subconscious mind doesn't respond to the intellectual content of your thoughts. It responds to the emotional charge that accompanies them. This revelation transforms how you understand the entire process of mental reprogramming. Most people approach affirmations and visualization as cognitive exercises, thinking they need to convince their subconscious that their statements are true. But your subconscious doesn't evaluate truth claims or logical arguments. It doesn't analyze whether your affirmations are reasonable, realistic, or rational. It responds exclusively to emotional authenticity and intensity, the feeling behind the thought rather than the thought itself. This insight reveals why two people can repeat exactly the same affirmation with completely different results. The person who mechanically recites "I am abundant" without genuine feeling creates little impact on their subconscious programming. But the individual who declares the same phrase with heartfelt conviction and emotional resonance delivers a powerful instruction that their subconscious begins implementing immediately. What makes this mechanism so remarkable is that your subconscious doesn't admit appeals, doesn't consider context, and doesn't make allowances for whether you were joking when you said something. If a phrase was pronounced with genuine emotion, whether that emotion was positive or negative, it gets accepted as real programming data. This is why guarding what you say when you're emotionally altered becomes absolutely critical for anyone serious about conscious creation. When you're angry, frustrated, scared, or overwhelmed, your emotional state actually amplifies the programming power of whatever words come out of your mouth. People will say things like, "I hate my life," or "I can't take this anymore," or "nothing ever works out for me" in moments of intense emotion, thinking these are just expressions of temporary feelings. But your subconscious receives these emotionally charged statements as serious instructions about what kind of reality to continue creating. This understanding completely transforms how you approach emotional situations. Instead of seeing challenging emotions as problems to be avoided, you begin recognizing them as powerful opportunities to plant new programming when your subconscious is most receptive. The same emotional intensity that can reinforce limitation can be redirected to establish empowering new patterns if you maintain awareness during these vulnerable moments. This brings us to one of the most profound revelations about the transformation journey. The real test of your understanding comes not during peaceful moments when positive thinking feels easy, but during periods of genuine pain, crisis, or difficulty. This is where most people unconsciously reinforce the very patterns they're trying to change. When facing physical discomfort, emotional distress, or external challenges, the natural human tendency is to strengthen suffering through what can only be called defeat thoughts. People will say things like, "This is never going to end," or "Why does this always happen to me?" or "I can't handle much more of this," during their most vulnerable moments. They believe they're simply expressing their honest feelings, but they're actually programming their subconscious to extend and intensify their suffering. Each emotionally charged statement of defeat becomes an instruction for their inner mind to create more of the same experience. But here's where conscious reprogramming becomes most powerful and transformative. If amid genuine pain, you can access the discipline to affirm something like, "This too shall pass," or "God's light guides me through this experience," you begin reversing the destructive pattern through direction rather than denial. You're not pretending the pain doesn't exist or trying to convince yourself that everything is perfect. You're consciously choosing to program your subconscious with images and words that lead toward resolution rather than prolongation of suffering. This approach represents a fundamental shift from unconscious victim programming to conscious creator programming. Instead of allowing difficult circumstances to automatically trigger limiting beliefs and defeating self-talk, you use those same circumstances as opportunities to plant empowering seeds in the fertile soil of heightened emotion. The impact of this shift cannot be overstated. When you learn to redirect your mental programming during challenging times, you're literally interrupting cycles that have been operating in your life for years or even decades. You're taking the emotional intensity that would normally reinforce limitation and redirecting it toward creating breakthrough patterns instead. This doesn't mean the pain disappears instantly or that external circumstances immediately change. But what does shift immediately is the trajectory of your subconscious programming. Now, I want to explore how this understanding of emotional programming extends to your physical body, because there's a remarkable connection between your conscious words and your cellular structure that explains why some people experience miraculous physical healing while others remain trapped in chronic conditions. Write in the comments, "I'm redirecting my emotional power," if you're beginning to recognize how your emotional states can either reinforce limitation or accelerate transformation, depending on how consciously you direct them. Your body isn't just a mechanical structure operating independently from your mind. Every cell, every organ, every system within your physical form is connected to and influenced by the continuous stream of mental instructions flowing from your subconscious. When you truly grasp this connection, you realize that mental authority can literally restore your body through conscious direction rather than hoping for external interventions or pharmaceutical solutions. This isn't alternative medicine or wishful thinking. It's recognizing the fundamental relationship between consciousness and physical matter. Your subconscious mind is already controlling every biological process in your body, from your heartbeat to your immune responses, your hormonal regulation to your cellular regeneration. The journey toward physical healing begins when you learn to consciously participate in this direction, rather than leaving it entirely to unconscious programming. Let me share a remarkable example that demonstrates just how quickly this conscious direction can produce tangible physical results. There was a woman who'd been suffering from nighttime palpitations for months. Every evening as she prepared for sleep, her heart would begin racing uncontrollably, creating anxiety that made rest nearly impossible. Night after night, she would lie in bed saying to herself, "I'm afraid to die sleeping," a phrase that carried intense emotional charge because it reflected her genuine fear. What she didn't realize is that this emotionally loaded statement was functioning as a direct instruction to her subconscious mind, programming her cardiovascular system to remain in a state of heightened alert and anxiety. Her heart was literally responding to the fearful programming she was unconsciously delivering through her internal dialogue. The palpitations weren't just a random physical symptom, they were the faithful manifestation of her verbal programming. The transformation began when she learned to consciously redirect her pre-sleep programming. Instead of reinforcing fear and emergency, she began repeating with sincere intention and genuine feeling, "My heart is strong, beats with divine life rhythm. I rest in peace." This wasn't empty positive thinking or wishful affirmation. It was deliberate reprogramming of the instructions her subconscious was sending to her cardiovascular system. The results were remarkable. Within just 2 weeks of this consistent mental redirection, her nighttime palpitations completely disappeared. Her heart rate normalized, her sleep quality improved dramatically, and her overall anxiety around bedtime vanished. This wasn't a medical miracle. It was the natural result of giving her subconscious mind clear, positive instructions about how her body should function during rest. This example reveals something profound about the hidden relationship between your mental images and your physical reality. Your organs, tissues, and cells are constantly receiving instructions from your subconscious mind, and these instructions are heavily influenced by your conscious thoughts, words, and mental images. When you learn to consciously direct this communication, you gain access to your body's incredible capacity for self-healing and regeneration. Think about the implications of this revelation for your own health journey. Every time you say, "My back is killing me," or "I'm falling apart," or "This body is getting old," you're literally programming your physical systems with instructions for dysfunction and decline. But when you begin speaking to your body with respect, appreciation, and positive direction, you start activating healing responses that were always available but weren't being consciously accessed. The blueprint for transformation requires understanding that your body isn't your enemy or even a neutral machine. It's your most loyal partner in the experience of physical life. It responds to your mental direction with incredible faithfulness, whether that direction is conscious and constructive or unconscious and destructive. The choice of which type of programming to deliver is entirely yours. This understanding completely shifts your relationship with any physical challenge or health concern. Instead of seeing your body as something that's betraying you or breaking down against your will, you begin recognizing it as an intelligent system that's simply following whatever instructions it's been receiving through your thoughts, emotions, and verbal programming. Now, I want to explore the deeper mechanism behind this mind-body connection, because there's a particular quality of your physical being that most people never recognize. One that explains why your words literally transform the molecular structure of your body in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand and document. Write in the comments, "I'm speaking life to my body," if you're beginning to recognize how your words directly program your physical systems, and you're ready to take conscious control of this communication. Your subconscious mind operates on what can only be described as image multiplication. When you repeatedly imagine yourself succeeding, healing, thriving, or experiencing joy with genuine emotion and unwavering consistency, your subconscious doesn't just store these images as pleasant fantasies or wishful thinking. It registers them as actual reality and immediately begins the complex process of moving resources, people, ideas, and physiological impulses toward creating conditions that match those internal images. Think about the profound implications of this revelation. Every time you vividly visualize yourself in perfect health, your subconscious begins adjusting hormone levels, optimizing immune function, and directing cellular repair processes to align with that image. When you consistently imagine yourself succeeding in your goals, your inner mind starts organizing thoughts, insights, and opportunities that naturally lead you toward those outcomes. This is why successful people often seem to have incredible luck or uncanny timing. They're not the recipients of special cosmic favor. They've learned to program their subconscious with clear, emotionally charged images of success, and their inner mind responds by orchestrating circumstances that match those mental blueprints. The hidden truth behind rapid transformation is that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you're vividly imagining and what you're actually experiencing. Both register as equally real in your inner programming system. This means you can literally practice success, rehearse health, and experience abundance in your imagination with such consistency that your subconscious begins creating external conditions to match your internal reality. But there's a specific way to amplify this image multiplication process that most people never discover, a technique that transforms casual visualization into precise subconscious programming. The key lies in understanding that your subconscious responds most powerfully not just to images, but to images that carry the specific emotional signature of gratitude and completion. When you visualize your desired outcome with the feeling that it has already been accomplished, you activate a level of creative power that casual daydreaming or wishful thinking can never access. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic and explore what happens when you begin to understand the true relationship between your words and your physical body. The words you speak don't simply dissolve into the air after you pronounce them. They dissolve directly into your blood, your skin, and your immediate environment. When you speak a phrase with genuine emotion, especially when that phrase is repeated consistently, you're literally writing with invisible fire on the water that composes the majority of your physical being. This isn't poetic metaphor or symbolic language. It's describing a real biological and energetic process that most people never recognize. Every word you speak with conviction becomes part of your cellular structure, influencing not just your thoughts and emotions, but the actual molecular composition of your body. Your words don't just program your subconscious mind, they actively transform the substance of your physical existence. To understand how profound this really is, you need to recognize what your body actually consists of. More than 70% of your physical mass is water, but this isn't neutral, empty water like what you might find in a glass or a lake. This is informed water, water that has been programmed and structured by every thought you've thought, every word you've spoken, and every emotion you've sustained. This information becomes literally engraved into the molecular structure of the water that flows through your bloodstream, bathes your cells, and forms the foundation of your physical existence. When the ancient text records that God said, "Let there be light," and light appeared, this wasn't metaphorical poetry about divine power. It was documenting the fundamental mental law that governs all creation. The same principle that operates in that cosmic example operates in your personal reality every single day. When you speak with conviction and emotion, you're exercising the same creative force that brought the universe into existence, except you're applying it to the smaller universe of your own body and circumstances. This revelation transforms how you understand the relationship between your spiritual nature and your physical experience. You're not trapped in a material body that's separate from your consciousness. You're living as consciousness expressed through a physical form that responds to your mental and verbal instructions with remarkable precision. Every cell in your body is continuously being influenced by the quality of thoughts and words you're feeding into your system. Now, I want to explore the impact of this understanding on persistent health challenges, because there's a specific connection between verbal programming and chronic conditions that reveals why some people experience complete healing while others remain trapped in cycles of recurring symptoms. Write in the comments, "My words shape my cells," if you're beginning to recognize the profound connection between your verbal expressions and the actual molecular structure of your physical body. The most persistent problems in people's lives aren't actually caused by external circumstances, genetics, or bad luck. They're caused by what can only be described as unconscious verbal programming that has been running in the background of their minds for years or even decades without being recognized or questioned. These invisible chains of limitation aren't random or accidental. They have specific origins that, once identified, can be consciously replaced with empowering alternatives. What's particularly revealing about these limiting patterns is that they often originate not from our own conscious choices, but from phrases we absorb during childhood through other people's words, or from unconscious acceptance of foreign beliefs that never actually belonged to us. These mental and verbal inheritances are passed down through families, communities, and cultures without anyone recognizing the transfer is happening. Think about the phrases you heard repeatedly during your formative years. Maybe it was, money doesn't grow on trees, or good things don't last, or people like us don't get those kinds of opportunities. These weren't just casual comments. They were belief systems being installed into your developing subconscious mind by people who had received the same programming from their own childhood experiences. The tragedy is that most people carry these inherited limitations their entire lives without ever questioning whether these beliefs are actually true or whether they serve their highest good. They unconsciously accept foreign programming as their own truth and then spend decades wondering why certain areas of their life never seem to improve despite their conscious efforts and sincere desires for change. Let me share a powerful example that demonstrates how quickly this recognition can lead to dramatic healing. There was a patient suffering from chronic thermal skin, conditions that had persisted for years despite various medical treatments and lifestyle changes. What became apparent through careful observation was that she had been unconsciously reinforcing her condition through repetitive self-talk that carried intense emotional charge. Multiple times each day, she would say things like, "This never goes away, I'm always sick, and nothing works on me." She thought she was simply describing her medical reality, but she was actually invoking what can only be described as a self-imposed curse through verbal programming. Each emotionally charged repetition of these limiting statements was being received by her subconscious as a direct instruction to maintain and even intensify her symptoms. The transformation began when she learned to consciously replace these destructive phrases with healing-oriented language. Instead of programming illness, she began affirming statements like, "My skin responds with perfect health. Every cell in my body knows how to heal, and I am whole, healthy, and completely restored." The results were remarkable. Within just 20 days of consistent verbal reprogramming, her condition showed evident improvement that surprised even her medical team. This example reveals something profound about what creates persistent challenges in human experience. When someone finds themselves trapped in repetitive problems, whether those problems are physical, financial, relational, or professional, it's not chance or cosmic bad luck ruling their life. It's an idea, often a very specific idea, that was planted years ago and has been unconsciously maintained through verbal reinforcement ever since. The most liberating discovery in this journey is realizing that you don't have to remain loyal to beliefs that don't serve your highest good. Even if those beliefs came from people you love and respect, you can honor your family and cultural background while still choosing to update any programming that limits your potential for health, abundance, love, and creative expression. This process requires developing what can only be described as mental sovereignty, the ability to examine inherited beliefs, evaluate their usefulness, and consciously choose which ideas deserve space in your subconscious mind. This isn't about rejecting your past or disrespecting your upbringing. It's about taking mature responsibility for the quality of programming that's currently operating in your consciousness. When you begin this process of conscious belief evaluation, you'll discover that many of the limitations you've been accepting as personal truth are actually foreign ideas that were never yours to begin with. They're mental artifacts from other people's experiences, fears, and restricted perspectives that somehow got installed in your subconscious during moments of emotional vulnerability or unconscious absorption. Now, I want to explore how this inherited programming specifically affects one of the most important areas of human experience, relationships. There's a fascinating pattern that reveals why some people consistently create harmonious connections while others remain trapped in cycles of conflict or disappointment. Write in the comments, "I'm examining my inherited beliefs," if you're beginning to recognize how unconscious programming from your past might be influencing your present circumstances. The journey we've taken together is really about awakening to your divine inheritance, reconnecting with the creative authority that was always yours. What we've explored isn't new information, it's ancient wisdom that your soul already recognizes, even if your conscious mind is hearing it for the first time. That sense of resonance, that feeling of yes, this is true, isn't intellectual agreement, it's spiritual recognition. If these principles have touched something deep within you, if you've felt that spark of remembering your true nature as a conscious creator rather than an unconscious victim, I'd love for you to be part of this awakening community. Subscribe to join us on this journey of rediscovering the God-Seed Within. Every video I create is designed to give you practical tools for conscious transformation, real techniques that work in the real world, not just inspiring ideas that sound good but don't change anything tangible. If you've stayed with me through this entire exploration, if these insights have touched something deep within you, leave a comment saying, "This message was meant for me," so I know you're part of this awakening community. Your presence here isn't accidental. You were ready to hear these truths, and that readiness drew you to exactly the right message at exactly the right time. And if you felt that connection we've built through these words, if this conversation has opened new possibilities in your thinking, I'd appreciate that like button. It helps more people discover these principles when they're ready to receive them. There's a video right here that takes everything we've discussed today and shows you how to apply it specifically to financial abundance, the exact techniques for programming prosperity consciousness that most people never learn. Click and continue with me over there, because your transformation journey is just getting started.